Hello everybody, we're going to do another Warhammer reaction today. Today we're going to be doing a dive into the Deep Warp. This is a subject I was somewhat interested in. I want to see where it heads. We've done a dive on everything else pretty much. Not everything, but on a lot of other overworld things. Like the different Primarchs out there, their legions, the Alien Reed legions and everything. The what's it called, the craft worlds, and I think it's about time we do a little bit of a dive into the warp itself and like the deep warp stuff. And I think this is a good direction to go into. Obviously I'm still going to be doing a lot more of it in general, so you know, one page out of 300 done, I guess, today. But let's get right into it. Alright, we are here. Hopefully this is as good as all the other stuff that I watched. You know, it's Warhammer. It'll be great no matter what. But without further ado, get your snacks ready. Get your drink, get your food, and get comfortable. Let's go ahead and watch this.
It's finally spooky season, and you know what that means. It's a perfect opportunity to talk about some creepy and obscure mysteries from the grimdark future of Warhammer 40k. From a beloved techno-archaeologist who disappeared deep beneath the surface of Mars, leaving behind only a single clue to what happened. A deeply disturbing Vox recording of his final moments. A strange species of aliens that scientists haven't been able to explain, and although originally thought to just be void-born pests, when attacked, demonstrated some truly frightening powers. And if the accounts of one particular madman are to be believed, the secret of what these things actually are is absolutely mind-blowing. We're also going to be talking about a theory that says that everything that we think we know about the warp is wrong, and how there's an area within the Sea of Souls that even the gods themselves are afraid to go to. We're going to be talking about all that and a whole lot more, but before we dive headfirst into the grimdark, a quick shout out to this video's sponsor.
Are you too busy to cook this fall but still want to make sure you're eating healthy? Then why not skip
Sorry, but it's skip
the mysterious entities known as the Umbra.
the Umbra.
The Milky Way galaxy of the 41st millennium has no shortage of strange and bizarre Xenos life forms, the most of which have either gone undocumented or the study and cataloging of is only in its infancy. Amongst them, the creatures known as the Umbra are perhaps the strangest. They appear as smooth black spheres that live within the void of space and are often attracted to areas that resonate with the warp. Voidfarers have traded tales of these things for centuries, of hundreds if not thousands of them showing up and hovering around their ships, being particularly attracted to their warp engines. For the longest time they seemed relatively harmless, and were originally viewed as just a pest. But the reality was that couldn't possibly be further from the truth. There was one particular instance where an Umbra managed to make it inside one of the ships. This is a brief snippet from the account of Navigator Unkli Nakis, who witnessed the event. Observing quarantine procedure, the officer of the watch ordered the pest destroyed and summoned stormtroopers to that end. No sooner had they opened fire than all hell broke loose. The creature was able to manipulate areas of darkness, drawing upon matter like oil from those zones of deepest shadow, the cracks between the bulkheads, beneath crates of supplies, even from the pupils of our own eyes. This assemblage of Umbros material was deployed in the most horrific fashion. A confluence of hooks, blades, teeth, and the like. Seeing his squad slaughtered and the barrage ineffectual, the commissar ordered a retreat and vented the hangar to the void. It would turn out that incidents like these were not particularly uncommon. There would be many reports of these creatures turning up in great quantities across the Imperium with alarming frequency. Most of the time they were easily dispersed, though at other times they would turn violently murderous. Entire ships have been lost to these shadowsmiths, the satellites ripped apart, even planetary colonies engaged by shapeless dark matter entities, which only the mightiest weapons can harm. The only thing that truly seems to hurt them, or at the very least scare them off, is great quantities of light. But even that is a double-edged sword, as casting that much light on them creates shadows that they can manipulate. A single one of these spheres having the potential to create armies of eldritch shadow monstrosities and a hurricane of bladed limbs and snapping jaws. At one point, one of the Umbra was dissected in order to be studied. It was said to have a surface that was uniformly black, with a carapace temperature that remained at 10 degrees Celsius despite the application of meltabeams or liquid nitrogen. It had no obvious means of motion, yet in confinement would hover at about head level. It had no respiratory, digestion, or excretion tracts, and thus was determined not to be an organism in the traditional sense. After the scientists had completed their physical observations of the specimen, they decided to euthanize it by exposing its cell to a continuous blast of strong light. They sent in 6 illuminator drones, pre-configured to adopt evenly spaced positions around the subject. The illuminators were activated at full strength for a period of about 30 seconds, and the subject's body appeared as if it was brightening. It was in that moment that all of the humans that were witnessing the execution suddenly experienced intense cranial pain. They were assaulted by a barrage of mental images that depicted a vast humanoid figure splintering apart, scenes of a turbulent warp storm, deep space, and a single word pulsing through their minds: linger. As quickly as it began, the phenomena abruptly ended, and the dead Umbra dropped to the floor. The Umbra still have a lot of secrets, and the list of known facts about them is dwarfed by the unknown, but
Alright, mega death marbles is what I'm gonna call them. That's creepy though, these death marbles, the Umbras, are so weird. Everything usually has an origin point. I wonder what's the origin of these ones, because like everything has like, we get the full history of how they started usually, or like what this came from, and everything. This is just weird, It reminds me of no, it doesn't remind me of that at all. Never mind. But like, it's weird. These death marbles have the power to summon eldritch-ish abominations for some reason, and feed on the warp engines, which is, I get why that looks like a pest thing, because that is a very pest thing to do.
whatever they actually are, and whatever their purpose is, they clearly have a demonstrable warp presence and seem naturally drawn to areas that resonate with the warp.
Yeah.
Whether they be the hulls of void ships or suspected points of access to the Eldar webway. Calculus Logibeer of the Mechanicus theorized that the Umbra were but a minuscule portion of extra-dimensional creatures. Inquisitor Maturin Raleigh speculated that they were innately hostile to human life and may be seeking to purge those species within the physical universe that caused the warp to become such a turbulent place. There was also the account of the admittedly confessed heretic Curto Salvador, who was burned at the stake after writing it. Visited I was by the thirster in the dark, her who dance moans, her who keeps her secrets breasted, her who came upon me and told and told. Time before she was born, she told, time before all that. Wars in heaven and hell, star devils lock horns triumphant, and old gods kill the way. Killed, she says, all but one. Hid away he did, up to his old ways, tweaking and dabbling, poking and prodding. She says, came a time when he's done his work, wants to hide and watch, always watching. So into the warp he goes. Then she's born in the long ear's brain, see, and she laughs out loud and chops him 1,000,000 times and kicks the shards out into the cold. To linger, she says, to linger like always. If his account is to be believed, it would seem to insinuate that the Umbra are shards of a broken god, a broken old one. Specifically Ka, the one worshipped by the species known as the Rud. This old one seemingly managed to escape the fate of his species at the conclusion of the war in heaven, before ultimately being shattered by Slaanesh during the fall of the Eldar Empire. But is this possible? Are the Umbra actually shards of an old one? Would it be possible for them to all come back together as an intact entity? Or is there something else going on here? There hasn't been a lot of information released on these guys in a long time, so it might be a mystery we unfortunately may never get an answer to. The deep warp theory.
That's cool. So there could be, I like to believe that there's a shards of an old one, because why not? We've seen shards of other things, like the Catan with the void dragons, right? Or the void dragon and such things, right? Why couldn't these things be a shard of an old one if there's like that many of them out there? I think that is, I'm going with that. I like the headcanon. I'm going with the headcanon. It just sounds right.
Proponents of the deep warp theory believe that the entirety of what we've been shown of the Immaterium so far in Warhammer 40k is nothing but the tiniest, most insignificant portion of it, and that much like how the oceans of ancient Terra were, the deeper you go into its waters, the stranger and more bizarre the entities you encounter. This is the realm of the deep warp, a kingdom built upon a foundation of rotting gods. The darkest, most turbulent depths of the Sea of Souls, an alien realm of psychic darkness where even demons and deities refuse to tread. To understand what the deep warp is, we can look at a real-world phenomena that takes place in our oceans each and every day, known as a whale fall. When a whale dies, its body sinks to the ocean floor. Their corpse can often create a hyper-complex localized ecosystem that supplies substance to a variety of different deep-sea organisms. It can take years or even decades for these carrion feeders to completely devour every last inch of the massive creature until all that remains is a lonely and forgotten skeleton.
Yeah.
And all of these entities slink back away.
Speaking about that, this has always been something, well, a little bit of a backstory. I used to be such a very big animal nerd back in my day. A very big animal nerd. Bruh, I hit my mic. Anyways, I used to be a really big animal nerd. I used to be into animals in the sea, animals in the land. Anyways, I always find it not unsettling, but kind of like very interesting how there's many ecosystems down there that would survive without this, but then they have stuff like this that would just fall down and they would just exceedingly gorge themselves into it. And seeing like hundreds of different like animals or deep sea animals just congregate together to feast upon a whale is one of the more creepier things in nature, but definitely one of the most interesting to see, due to the fact that, you know, usually these animals would never be together, but because of a certain food source, they all just like allow each other to just be near each other and like enjoy this food. Obviously they fight over it in some ways, but like, yeah, you never would see this many different groups of animals together, and they don't have too much to worry about, seeing as most of the bigger predators can't even go this deep in the ocean, which I'm assuming this is the pretty deep zones because there's no light here. Even then there's no light source, but I don't see any, doesn't look like any coral reef sediment or anything. It looks like the ocean floor, which would be usually much deeper, but it still depend on where it fell, because, you know, ocean do be like that weird.
Away into the black. Proponents of the deep warp theory believe that much like the oceans of ancient Terra, the Sea of Souls works in a similar manner. That when a significantly powerful warp entity or great deity dies, its essence sinks deep beneath the turbulent tides into an infinite well of madness and insanity, whereupon it will be consumed by creatures so alien and bizarre, it's impossible to even attempt to describe them. There are some who like to point to the existence of the Well of Eternity as evidence that the deep warp is in fact real. It is said to be a vast receptacle of knowledge and arcane power, the center of all reality, the place where time and space originated and ended, a place that even the chaos gods are afraid to go to. The concept of the warp is not just a stagnant realm of infinite energy in every direction and has distinct areas to it, some vastly more dangerous, turbulent, or unknowable than others, is an idea that was commonplace amongst the Thousand Sons of the Great Crusade era. For the most part, they were told to stick to what they refer to as the shoals of the Great Ocean, and to never venture too deep, for humanity wasn't ready for that. However, the idea of the deep warp itself is not something that I have found within their writings. Most of the people who subscribe to the deep warp theory will often point to one particular passage where they believe it is mentioned in the novel The Path of Heaven by Chris Raitt. There are layers. There's Stratum Ethereus, the shallow ways. There is Stratum Profundus, the greater arteries. Plunging deeper, there is Stratum Obscuris, the root of terror. No living man can navigate the deep ways. Even he could not. It's not a mirror. It moves like a living thing. It is a living thing. Touch it and it trembles. I do not have the eye, but I still have seen things. I have studied what they study. The complexity is immortal. The sea is an ocean. All know this. It has currents, it has depths, it has storms. Near the surface, you can see the Cartomancer's light. You can follow it. You can use your Geller Aegis, and you are kept barred from the intelligences. But even then, you are just below the upper limits. Go deeper, and the Aegis shatters. The lights go out. The eye is blinded. When men say they traverse the warp, they boast. For no mortal does more than skim across eternity's face, like stones thrown by a child. We do not belong there. It is poison for us, and the deeper in, the worse the poison. It takes the power of a tormented sun just to puncture the shallowest shoals. No energy in our arsenal could possibly pierce further. String the reactors of a dozen battleships together, double their potential, and it still would not be enough. Although there does seem to be some evidence to support the existence of what we would consider to be the deep warp, it's important to remember that it's mostly just fan speculation. This is just a theory. There's just not enough concrete evidence to point to other than a few key conversations in certain novels. The idea of the deep warp is something that I would love Games Workshop to explore a bit more in the future, but I hope they never give us too many definitive answers. It would just kind of ruin the whole cosmic horror vibe this theory has going on. The mysterious disappearance of
Yeah, I 100% agree with his statement where I want it to be cosmic horror type monsters, right? We have these like foundational like gods, like, you know, Korn and you know, fucking Nurgle, Discord mod motherfucker, Zinc, fucking nerd. And then we have Sinesh, which is just down bad. Anyways, anyways, I was gonna say, we have these like these gods and these beings that are like, yeah, we understand how they work, we understand why they exist, and then there's just like the shallow area. The deeper we go, the more the ideals and like the thoughts and the reasons these beings exist blur the lines, and it comes into like there's beings that exist down there that we cannot explain because we just don't understand the reasons for them existing. But there is reasons, but we would never know because our minds can't comprehend these complex beings and like crazy amalgamations of just creatures that are beyond our thought process. And I like it. I really like it. I want it to be true. It would make so much sense. It would be so cool, and it'd be great to know that there's beings down there that like I did a Lovecraftian deep dive. Like there's beings down there that are just so above us that they don't mess with us, but they just exist down there for their own goals and means, and they might have nothing to do with our reality, or they might not even care about it. They just exist down there, feeding and feeding and feeding upon any dead deity, god, and higher powered entity that dies and falls down into deaths, literally and physically and power wise. You know, it makes so much sense, and it's great. I like it. I want it to be real, 100%.
Arkan Land. The earliest mention that we have of the famous techno-archaeologist Arkan Land comes from an old White Dwarf article where it was revealed that he discovered the STC fragments that contained the blueprints for the Land Raiders, meaning that, yes, the Land Raiders are named as such due to the man that discovered them. He was always just this obscure background
STC?
character that no
You
one
found
really
some?
knew anything about, and just kind of served as a fun fact to know about Land Raiders. But that would all change in the Horus Heresy novel line, as he was a prominent character in several of the books and really came into his own. A lot of Warhammer fans, myself included, think he's an absolute treasured smart boy. I genuinely find him hilarious and charming. One of my absolute favorite inventions of his is a pet cyborg monkey. Now, monkeys have been extinct on Terra for tens of thousands of years, so he had to go off of their fossil records in order to recreate them. And he gave it a scorpion tail, because that's kind of what it looks like if you've just got bones to work with. When questioned about this by another individual who pointed out that their tail was probably prehensile and used to hang from branches, Arkan Land said that was absolutely ridiculous. What purpose would that serve? Monkeys were clearly deranged and venomous predators. I f***ing love this dude. However, Arkan Land unfortunately suffered.
Right, totally. Monkeys. It's like, I mean, I'll be honest. It's kind of like the dinosaurs, right? It's kind of like the dinosaurs. There's a lot of there's a lot of fossils and everything, and a lot of things that are like old type like drawings that are not done right because we don't know the flesh amalgamations. It's kind of like also like the hippo skeleton, right? We could look at the hippo skeleton and try to recreate it, but because we don't know, like if we didn't know how it looks with all its blubber and fat, we would probably make an abomination looking animal instead of a hippo, because we just do not know the meat proportions, because we have nothing to work off of besides what it was as a herbivore. Okay, then maybe, you know, we wouldn't, besides that, we wouldn't really have anything to work off of really too much. And it also depends how much of the skeletal structure is left, you know, from the animal that we have to study also as well. Besides that point, I was just bringing up that point. It's like, yeah, them messing it up, it's understandable, you know. Of course he messed it up, or not, it's not right, but like that just makes sense. It just makes sense.
from the same fate that a lot of 40k characters do, wherein originally they're just a little bit of background fluff and then they become characters in their own right in the later novels. But that very first mention that we got of him didn't just tell us who he was, it told us how he died. As a techno-archaeologist, Land had dedicated his life to scouring the catacombs and tech vaults beneath the surface of Mars in order to recover fragments of STCs and pieces of ancient lost archaeotech from the Dark Age of technology. It was because of his efforts that the Imperium has access to some of their greatest technology. At one point, he led a 3-year expedition into the Liberius Ominous, which is an ancient underground library the size of a continent that stretches underneath the surface of Mars. It was here that he discovered not only the blueprints for the Land Raider pattern main battle tank, but also a universal land engine that would later become the basis of the Onager Dooncrawler, and patterns for anti-gravitic plates that would be utilized in the construction of land speeders, again named after him. In addition to this, he was able to map a region of the catacombs the size of a small nation. Now, despite his efforts, the vast library still had many secrets left to be uncovered. It was, however, years later, after the conclusion of the Horus Heresy, that Land would lead his fated second expedition into the library. He was never seen again, and only a single record of the expedition was ever uncovered. It consisted of a Vox diary wherein Land's panicked voice could be heard speaking about his team, how they were being picked off one by some unknown entity that was lurking in the darkness. I can't put into words just how dangerous of a place Mars actually is. There are all forms of mutants, rogue AIs, and unfathomable blasphemous machines that roam out in the wastes. And we can only imagine what ancient, unspeakable horrors dwell beneath its dunes. It's worth bearing in mind for comparison that Mars is indeed the planet where the Catan known as the Void Dragon is buried. I personally don't believe the Void Dragon had anything to do with this disappearance, as the Mechanicum book makes it pretty clear that it's contained, but it is worth mentioning as it sets a pretty dangerous precedent for all manner of horrifying entities of impossible power running loose beneath Mars's red sands. What ultimately killed Land and his crew is subject to limitless debate. Many speculate that it was some type of predator, while others claim it was a psychic entity, or perhaps even a sentient virus. Whatever the case may be, whatever ultimately is lurking deep in the dark, perhaps it is simply proof that the secrets of the Dark Age of technology are best left to the shadows of mystery and prehistory.
Nah, I'm not gonna lie. If I had anything to do in this universe, I'd be exploring that bitch. I don't care if he died. I don't care if that's my fate. That's exactly where I want to be. I want to be exploring that library. Might be dark. There might be monsters everywhere. But like, I feel like a big urge. Like, if there's anything I want to be exploring and gathering in that universe, it'd be that. It'd be there. I want to get that knowledge. It's so big, and it's like that big, and he's like that match. It's just prime real estate. I need to go find what I need to do. The forbidden knowledge, the forbidden numbers. I must go see. I'm just saying, it's so interesting. That's probably the most interesting thing, for me personally, that I've seen so far. I'm not gonna lie.
What is written on the Terminus Decree? The Terminus Decree is one of the most sacred and mysterious relics in the entirety of the Imperium's history. It is said that at any given point in time, only a single person alive knows of it, and that each and every one of those individuals was a Supreme Grand Master of the Grey Knights chapter of Space Marines. It is locked away within the Chamber of Purity on Titan, inside of the tomb of Malkador the Sigillite, and is comprised of a single box with instructions stating that it should only be opened when the death of humanity is at hand, when the clock finally strikes midnight and the long war comes to an end. Now, what exactly the Terminus Decree is still remains a mystery. I mean, technically, there could be anything inside of that box. Some believe that it contains an artifact of great and terrible power that can summon a force beyond comprehension that will single-handedly destroy all of mankind's enemies, while others speculate that it is a device capable of purging the warp itself of all demonic influence. And most of these rumors center around it bringing salvation to mankind and paving the way forward for a new golden age. While these theories are certainly optimistic, as something that is severely lacking in the grim darkness of the far future, I'm not entirely convinced. And that's for a couple of reasons. The first is that if it truly was a device that would bring about the salvation of humanity, why wouldn't they have used it yet? Secondly, Terminus literally means the end, and the sigil that is inscribed upon the box can only be found in one other location in the galaxy, the Golden Throne. This has led many to speculate that it contains instructions for shutting down the Golden Throne, thus allowing the Emperor to end his long vigil and finally be allowed to die. The more hopeful interpret this as that since the Emperor is a perpetual, he would be reborn, rising up to push back the darkness and lead humanity into the future once more. But there are a lot of unknowns when it comes to the Emperor's perpetualness. Not all perpetuals are the same. Sometimes they respawn in only a short period of time in the exact same location, and other times they pop up somewhere else in the galaxy. It could take seconds, minutes, years, decades, or even centuries. With this information in mind, shutting down the Golden Throne could be an apocalyptic scenario. The Astronomicon would fail, cutting off all communication and warp travel. The Emperor would die, thus bringing down his protective psychic barriers around the Sol system. And not to mention Vulcan's doomsday device that is directly linked to the Emperor's pulse would detonate. If the Terminus Decree really is a Golden Throne user manual and details how to shut it down, then its use may be something as grimly simple as an option to let humanity go out on its own terms, a way of accepting the species' extinction with dignity. However, if we want to engage in a healthy dose of optimism, the Terminus Decree may be a set of instructions for the Emperor's revival. This would clarify why it hasn't been used yet, as the Emperor has supposedly been gathering his strength within the warp, and by all accounts is not ready to be revived yet. And considering that Malkador stood by the Emperor's side for thousands of years, knew more about him than any other person in the galaxy, with the exception of perhaps Erda. And most importantly, this relic is housed inside of his tomb and protected by the chapter of Space Marines that he created. The Terminus Decree may be instructions left by Malkador and entrusted to the Grey Knights on how to carry out their final mission. This would make sense, seeing that it was revealed in the Siege of Terra that the Grey Knights, although being created during the Horus Heresy, were not made to fight on Terra. They were made to fight a war that would come thousands of years later. There's honestly a billion different things that the Terminus Decree could be, so it would be irresponsible for anyone to try to make a definitive claim one way or the other. However, in doing research for this section of the video, I checked out the wiki page on the Terminus Decree in order to get their source list so I could read them for myself. And it made a pretty startling claim, that the Terminus Decree was directly linked to the research of the mad scientist Basileau Foe. If you're unfamiliar with this character, he was a prisoner in the Imperial Palace during the Siege of Terra. During an interview with Euphrates Keeler, it was revealed to us that he was capable of creating an anti-Astartes phage that could kill all of the Space Marines and their Primarchs. Now, considering that the palace was at that very moment under siege by Horus and his armies, the prospect of such a dangerous weapon being unleashed was an option worth considering. It was ultimately decided that the cost would be too great, and thus the phage was not utilized, though Valdor kept the option on the table as a last resort. The novel The End in the Death Volume 1 seems to indicate that Malkador set in motion a series of events that would make sure this option would remain as a viable contingency plan long after his death, leading many people to believe that this is in fact what is written on the Terminus Decree. Full disclosure, I haven't finished the Siege of Terra yet, as part of doing a lore channel means I need to split my time between the Horus Heresy and more modern 40k books. I'm trudging my way through Mortis. It's not a bad book, but it's definitely the weakest Siege of Terra novel. And as of the time of this recording, the new Belisarius Call versus Fabius Bile book just came out, and I'm personally way more interested in that. Anyways, from what I've been able to gather, this is something that is only alluded to in that novel, but it's not directly confirmed. And if this really is what the author is trying to indicate to us, it changes what the Terminus Decree is all about, because wiping out all of the Astartes, both traitor and loyalist alike, would certainly be a massive blow to the galaxy. But the Space Marines are not the end-all be-all of the Imperium's military might. Likewise, chaos would still exist with or without the Despoiler's legions. And it would have no impact on all of the hostile Xeno species that wish to bring about the death of mankind. So this would change the Terminus Decree from being the end of humanity to the end of the Space Marines. It's certainly a possibility, but like I said, I'm not entirely convinced. I think it's more just a part of what the Terminus Decree is and not the end-all be-all of it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we still don't know what the Terminus Decree actually is, and for humanity's sake, hopefully we never will. But what do you think of all this? What do you think the Terminus Decree actually is, and what is it eventually going to be used for? Do you think the Umbra are actually shards of an old one, or do you have a different theory? Do you think there's actually such a thing as the deep warp, or is this just a fan theory that's gotten too much attention? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. And let me know if you know of any other creepy 40k mysteries that you'd love to hear me talk about. I get my best ideas from you guys, and my favorite part about doing YouTube as a full-time job is having a constant group of people that I can nerd out about 40k with. Anyways, big thanks to everyone who supports the work that I do, and I will catch you all in the next one.
All right. I was gonna say, so far, right? I gotta say, I enjoyed this very much. First off, second off, it. First off, let me. No, okay. Anyways, let me just say, the deep warp, I want it to exist. It's fine if it doesn't, but it'd be so cool if it did exist, right? It'd be awesome. I want it to exist just because it add a lot more layers, right, to the warp. And it'd be cool if such like beings like that and bottom feeders and like such, like, you know, they don't have to be necessarily strong, but creepy looking things existed down there. Second, I think the Umbra are probably not shards of the old one, but I want them to be. It'd be so much cooler. It's, like I said, I'm gonna go with it's probably not that cool. It's probably not the cool answer. It's probably the regular answer. That's probably not, but it'd be cool and awesome if it was. And then for the third one, or I want to explore that library. I want to explore that library. It looks so cool. I want to explore it. I just want to explore it very much. Also, what I think the decree is, me myself personally, I think I'm gonna go with the because he called it a salvation, but then it's associated with that doctor that could have killed the Primarchs and that. I think it is a way to probably resurrect the Emperor. I think it is. If I were to guess, it'd probably be a way to resurrect the Emperor if I had to guess. Which honestly, considering everything, I could see why they haven't used it, because he's trying to get his power up. He's in the warp, all that. But like, yeah, I could 100% see it being, you know, how to resurrect the Emperor. But it's just they don't want to use it yet. That would be my guess. That would be 100% my guess. 100%. Anyways, that has been my reaction to the deep warp and other creepy mysteries. It is 100% 100% was worth watching, and it's very interesting. I very much enjoyed it. And if you enjoyed it as well, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and you know, I also stream, so follow me on Twitch, I guess, or any other social. Besides that, hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.